Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Ball, and I'm a librarian in the Business and Economics Department at Los Angeles Public Library. Welcome to today's program, which is brought to you by SCORE LA and the library. Our topic today is secrets to starting your own business or franchise. Before we get started, I do just want to go over a few housekeeping items. First, just to remind you all, this presentation is being recorded. So if you miss anything or have to leave early or just don't feel like taking notes, no worries. The video will be here on the library's YouTube channel, and you can always come back and rewatch it. And second, we would love to hear from you if you have any questions for the presenter. And so if you do have questions, what you'll do is you'll go ahead and type those into the chat box. Feel free to submit your questions at any point during the presentation. We will make note of them, and we will hold off until the end to address your questions and answer them. And with that said, I am very happy to introduce today's presenter, Page Nicol, who is a franchise specialist at FranNet. Page has been involved as a franchise owner, developer, and consultant for over 35 years. After graduating from the University of San Diego, Page started in commercial real estate as a retail specialist. In 1987, he purchased his first mailboxes, etc., UPS store franchise, and soon thereafter became the Master Franchisee for San Diego. Over a 25-year period, he built and sold over 65 UPS stores. His UPS stores consistently ranked in the top 1% of all UPS stores in the United States. In 2001, Page purchased with his brother FranNet Southern California and later FranNet Pacific Northwest. These FranNet territories are the top producing areas in the United States and consistently help hundreds of individuals successfully start their own business. Along with UPS Store and FranNet, Page has started more than a dozen different businesses, ranging from marketing to consulting, commercial signage, and executive suite offices. He takes his wide-ranging knowledge of business ownership and shares it with other individuals looking to learn how to start their own business. And with that, I am very happy to hand things over to Paige. Welcome.
Thank you, Danielle. So thank you and welcome everyone. I think they're bringing our slides up now, but before we get started, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. Thank you for the LA Library and SCORE. I've been doing these workshops, for quite some time, actually going as far back as 1997 when we used to do these on slide carousels. So if that gives you any indicator how long I've been around, it's been for quite some time. So hopefully you'll find this presentation informative and helpful. And why don't we get started, and we'll introduce you to a little bit about our agenda today. So when I do these presentations, oftentimes what people are looking for is kind of a general overview to start with, which is why own any business, whether it's a franchise or a startup or what have you. And so we'll go over, some of the reasons why people are starting their own business. What are the different options? As I mentioned, I've done all of them. I've done franchise, non-franchises, consulting, all different types of businesses, and their pros and cons to all. And we'll look at the risks and the rewards of those different ideas. And number 4, the myths or facts about franchising. This is actually what most of the people that give me feedback tell me that is their biggest takeaway. In that, one of my goals today is try and dispel some of the myths, some of the head trash people have about franchises, and maybe give you a better clarity on what a franchise is. And then how do you pick the best option? With franchising alone, there's over 4,000 options. So how would you possibly know, which one's the right fit for you? And most importantly, how do you put a business model together? And that's going to be important, whether it's with a franchise or anything else. You have to know what you're looking for before you go out and buy it or start it. Danielle did a great introduction, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But needless to say, I've been doing this for almost 40 years now, and I have a wide range of experience. And really what I'm passionate about is helping people become self-employed. And I've helped thousands of people do that over the almost 40 years. And that is where I enjoy it the most. And what I like is when people call me a year, 2, 3 years later after they start their business, and they tell me, Paige, this was the best thing I've ever done. You've changed my life and helped my family, and that's what gets me up every morning. So as far as who FranNet is, and as Danielle mentioned, I've been doing this for quite some time with my brother. We are a franchise consulting company, and there's 50 offices around the United States. As mentioned, I pretty much work the Southern California area, San Diego, Orange County, Los Angeles, Ventura, Riverside. Those are the markets I focus on. And my brother lives up in Bend, Oregon, and he handles the Oregon, Idaho, and Washington markets. But what we are is a matchmaking service. And the analogy I give people, which I think is always the most helpful, it's like going out and buying a house. And a lot of people have done that. And when you go out and buy a house, how do people do that today? Well, oftentimes when they're thinking about moving, let's say to Santa Monica, they may go on Zillow or Realtor.com and they type in the zip code or the city, and then they put in some filters, price range, number of bedrooms, and things like that. And maybe there are hundreds of homes, maybe even thousands, but at least hundreds of homes for sale in Santa Monica. And their goal is on Zillow or Realtor.com to kind of narrow that focus a little bit. And so all of a sudden now you're down to 40, 50, 60 homes to look at, and then people scroll through the pictures and pick the ones they like. But when they're really serious about buying a home, they're going to hire a real estate expert. And usually they're going to get a experienced real estate agent, and they're going to go to that agent and let them know what they're looking for. And that agent's going to ask them a lot of questions so that they can further refine the type of house they want. And typically that real estate agent will take them out, show them 4, 5, 6, 7 homes. And if they find one they like, they make an offer, and that real estate agent helps them through the buying process. I do the same thing. The difference is I represent over 300 different franchises. And what I do is narrow the options down to 3, 4, or 5. And we'll talk later how I do that. And then I help you research those companies, get financing, legal advice, and things like that. And it's a no-cost service. I get paid by the seller of the franchise, much like the real estate agent, at least in the old days anyways, got paid by the seller of the house. So if you're kind of curious about franchising, not sure where to start, my no-cost process and consulting could be very helpful for you. But let's jump into why people start any kind of business, franchise or anything else. When I've, with the people I've helped over the years, these are kind of the common denominators that come up time and time and again. And you'll see success at the top of the list. And why I say that and why people express that to me is they want their own success. They're tired of working for someone else and help them become successful. They want their own success. They want more fulfillment. Maybe they've been doing the same job for 10, 20, maybe even 30 years, and they've enjoyed it and they've made good money, but now they want to do something for themselves. Flexibility is a big one. A lot of people went to remote working. Some people are back in the office, but the bottom line is people got a taste during COVID about work-life balance, how they can spend time with their families, with their kids, traveling, things like that. But they want more flexibility in their schedule. They want more independence. They want more control over their life. And, layoffs right now are just starting to trickle back up. But people want control over that. They don't want an employer have all the control over, what is the next biggest thing, which is financial security. And one of the things we'll talk a lot about is retirement. And I don't know who's on today. You could be 20 or you could be 60 like I am. But at some point, retirement becomes something that we talk about a lot. And in Southern California, it's very, very expensive to retire here. In fact, most people say they need between $1.5 and $2 million of assets to retire. And that's a lot of money. A lot of people say, well, I don't know if I can get there. I don't have those kind of assets in my house or my 401k or anything else. And so a business can become another option that allows you to diversify your portfolio and have another source of income. So oftentimes why people are looking to start a business is they want something that will help them in retirement, so they're not solely focused on their, investments and so forth. So the interesting thing is, and this happens whether we have high unemployment or low unemployment, oftentimes when people come to me and maybe they've gotten laid off or had to exit their job for whatever reason, and they say, hey, I want to start my own business, the vast majority of those people will go back to work. And why is that? I think risk is the number one. Most people feel that a job is much safer than a business. And in some ways that's true, in some ways it's not. So right now, I think in California, unemployment is around 5 or 6%. And we see it definitely in the technology fields, the unemployment rate is growing. But we're a long way away from the 6, 7, 8% unemployment we had several years ago. So a lot of times people think, hey, I have a job, I show up every day, everything's fine. Why should I worry about it? But what they're starting to see is, hey, I may not be able to depend on that job for the next 5, 10, 20 years. There is a growing chance that I could get laid off. Also, the economy. And the funny thing is here, no matter what's going on in the economy, people say, hey, I'm going to wait for it to get better. So we could have a very robust economy, and we could have a bad economy, and people are always waiting for the economy to get better. And what I tell people is, I said, look, there's really no right or wrong time to start a business. I would say more people start businesses in a poor economy than in a vibrant economy, and mostly because they're looking for alternative paths, and they're trying to take advantage of, maybe the lower interest rates and availability of real estate and things like that. Obviously, a business costs money, a job doesn't. So that's the other thing. People say, hey, you know what? I don't have to pay money to, for my job, but if I go buy a business, I'm going to have to spend money. And that is true. But one of the things we're going to talk about is ways to raise capital and get financing. Knowledge is another thing. People think, whatever they do, it has to be based on their education or their careers or so forth. And they say, well, I'm an IT, or I'm an engineer, or I'm a marketing person. How does that parlay into business ownership? And we're going to cover some of that today. And also skill sets. What's important in starting your own business is your transferable skill sets. It's not your degree. It's not, your past employment history. That's helpful. But what's really important is, what are you good at? Are you good at sales? Are you good at marketing? Are you good at logistics? Are you good at numbers? What things are you good at? And more importantly, what are you not good at? And if you buy a business, who's going to take care of those things for you? But the thing that I always bring up is, in reality, is working for someone else safe. And in the short term, I would say yes. Right now, with unemployment being, modestly or relatively low, I'd say job security is pretty good right now. But the question is, as the economy changes, as we see more layoffs happen, and some of that's just through automation and things like that, it's not even about the economy. Can you guarantee that you're going to have your job for the next 5, 10, 15 years, or however long you need it? And can your performance guarantee that security? And usually we find people get laid off all the time that are, performing at very, very high levels. It's rare that people are getting laid off because they're not doing their job. It's more because something's going on in the economy or with that company or with automation or things like that. Also, people my age are getting aged out. So people in their 50s and 60s, and sometimes even in their 40s, are being replaced by less expensive employees that are in their 20s or what have you, that are willing to work and do the same amount of work, but do it for much less pay. But as we talked about, one of the things you have to think about with your current job and your current, retirement and everything you're building right now is your long-term financial goals. And can you get where you need to go, especially as you're getting into retirement? So one of the things about owning your own business that myself and others who've gone into business for themselves is, no one can take it away from you. It's your baby. You can make it big, you can make it small, you can grow it fast, you can grow it slow, you can build it to sell, whatever you want to do. No one can take it away from you. And the thing that I will say, having been a business owner for almost 40 years now, and most of my clients will say, is the longer you own a business, the safer it gets. So what we see is the longer you have a job, the riskier it gets, the higher the likelihood of being terminated. But the longer you have a business, the likelihood of that business growing and becoming safe and stable are higher. Sometimes that takes a year, sometimes that takes 5 years. Every business is going to be a little bit different. But as you talk to people that have been in business for a few years or several years, they'll say, hey, the first year or two was kind of tough and I was a little bit nervous, but now that it's going, I feel a lot more confident about it, and I don't worry about it on a day in and day out basis. So we talked about the different ways to go into business ownership, and I've done all four: starting a business from scratch, going into consulting, buying a franchise, buying an existing business, and they're all great, but they all have pros and cons. So let's look at starting a business from scratch. And by and far, this is what most people do. They have an idea or a thought, and they get a business license, and they apply for it, and they start a business. It could be a restaurant, it could be a flower business, it could be a design business. It doesn't really make any difference. This is the backbone of the US economy, are people starting their own businesses. So the nice thing is you have all the control. You get to make all the decisions. You can be very creative. No one's telling you what to do or how to do it. Very large upside, especially if you hit it well, like a Jeff Bezos with Amazon, or Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, or what have you. If it goes well, it can have huge upside. And the other thing is, I will say, usually when people are starting their own business, they're doing something they're very passionate about, something that either they've wanted to do their whole life, or they've been doing it, now they want to do it on their own. The challenge is that you have to figure it all out on your own. All the systems, all the marketing, how to hire people, how to pay people, technology, everything has to be done on your own. There's no one to help you with that, so you have to figure it out. And because of that, startups tend to ramp up very slowly. And so you have to have the staying power, if you will, especially with your personal and home expenses, to go through a long ramp up period. And unfortunately, startups have a very, very high failure rate. I've heard as high as 90%. I don't know if that's the exact statistic, but it's really more why. And the reason is that most people run out of money before the business starts working. So there's nothing wrong with doing a startup. I've done many myself, but plan for a long ramp up period and make sure you have the financial resources to carry you through. Now, buying an existing business, every single client I work with, especially today, says, hey, I just want to buy something that's already up and running. It can be a franchise, because I deal with franchises that someone is selling. And why do people want it? Again, they get all the control. Theoretically, there's instant cash flow. Theoretically, there's goodwill. All the financial results are there, so we can go back and look at history and see how well this business has been doing. Obviously, lenders like it, especially if it has positive cash flow. The market's established, the employees are established, the customers are established, the systems are in place. So it has a lot of the benefits that a startup doesn't have, meaning that, okay, all the systems are in place, I just need to go in and take it over. In theory, that's true, but I've done a lot of buying of existing businesses, and some work very well and some don't. And what I've tended to find is, first of all, you have to figure out what is the true cash flow of that business. And those are things that I can help you with, or a CPA can help you with, or a SCORE mentor can help you with. But it's very important to determine, is this business really making as much money as the seller tells you? Is there any bad will going on? And sometimes you don't know this until after you buy a business. I bought a business last year, and the seller had a dog, and it's kind of funny, but the dog would bite the male customers. And for whatever reason, she kept bringing her dog into business every day. But I didn't learn about that problem until after I bought the business. Now, the good thing is the seller left, the dog left, so it wasn't a problem. but I had to go convince all those customers, hey, we don't have that dog here anymore. It's safe to come back. So sometimes there's things that you don't know. We call them hidden seller motives. Maybe there's some reason why the owner is selling. And they may not always tell you. They may say, well, I'm going through a divorce or I'm moving or what have you. So yes, it can be legitimate, but sometimes they say that, but there are other things going on. So there's nothing wrong with buying a resale. It's just very, very, very important that you determine the cash flow of the business. Are they asking a fair price? And is there any hidden seller motives that you need to know about before buying this business? Consulting. A lot of my clients, especially those that, have white collar jobs, a lot of times they decide to go into consulting on the side or a side gig or even a replacement. And the reason is very simple. It's like, hey, I know how to do what I do. IT, engineer, marketing, sales, whatever it is. I'm just going to go do it myself. And I'm going to offer my consulting services to other companies or other people. Very, very low cost. It usually doesn't cost much to get the business started. It usually ramps up pretty quickly. As you start making money, as soon as you start getting clients. Like a startup, you're making all the decisions, lots of room for growth, and being creative. And in this case, you're using your skill sets more than probably anything else, because that's what you're going out and selling people on. But that's the challenge. You have to sell. The biggest thing that my clients get surprised by when they start a consulting business, and I know this from personal experience, is you have to be good at sales and you have to be good at networking. People are not going to come to you. You have to go to them and tell them what you do, how you do it, and why you're better than someone else. So it's very sales and networking oriented. And I'd say one of the biggest challenges is you really don't, build any value in the business. With a startup or an existing business, you have something to sell, but with a consulting business, you usually don't. So it's a great way to make money. But if you're looking for a business that you can sell later on or pass on to your kids or something like that, usually consulting doesn't always make the right fit. Now, we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about franchising. I'd love to say that it's the best thing to do and it's the only way to go, but there are pros and cons to franchising. Now, why do people buy franchises? Why do I own franchises and help people start franchises? Brand recognition, proven business systems. So UPS store is a great example. I built 65 UPS stores, but I don't even know what the number is. But now it's 7,000, 8,000 UPS stores open worldwide. It's a proven business system. It's been around since the early 80s. We know it works. Also, all franchises are going to train you on how to run the business, and they're going to support you once you're up and running. And oftentimes that's why there's a lower failure rate, because now here you are given a system. And if you follow that system and don't try and figure it out on your own, if you follow the system or their menu, you're going to probably have the same results as the other people have before you. There are a lot of disclosure document information we're going to talk about. So franchising is very, very heavily regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. But one of the things people don't realize that I think is the reason why franchises succeed over, say, startups, is when you own a franchise, I always tell people you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. Now, why is that important? You own your own business. Yes, you're working someone else's system. It's yours to run, but you have all these other people to lean on. So, for example, with FranNet, we have a owners meeting at the end of every week, and we always talk about best practices. What are we doing that's working? What are we doing that's not working? And every other franchise I've ever been part of, that's the case. And for me, I usually will go talk to the top producers and say, hey, what are you doing? And then see if I need to make those changes. And if I hear about things that are not working, excuse me, or things that people are doing that are costing them business or costing them money, that's something that I won't repeat. So you're constantly learning from the people that are in business or the people that have done it before you. Now, the big challenge is you are running someone else's system. So you are running that UPS store according to how UPS store wants it run, or you're running FranNet, how FranNet, wants you to run it. So a lot of people, excuse me, don't like following someone else's system. So if you're very entrepreneurial and you're like, I don't want anyone telling me what to do or how to do it, oftentimes franchising is not the right fit. And then, for that training and the support and the name recognition, you have to pay for it. And usually that comes in the form of royalty payments. 5, 6, 7, 8% of your gross revenue will go back to the parent company. Now, they have to provide a lot of things for those payments, but you have to be okay that it's going to cost money for that ongoing training, support, and name recognition. We talked a little bit about regulation and the fact that franchising is heavily regulated by the Federal Trade Commission. And in California, it's further regulated by the Department of Corporations. So how does that work? Well, every franchise has to publish what's called a franchise disclosure document. We call it FDD for short. And that FDD has all the information about the company, and it's about 200 to 300 pages long. So the franchisor, the principals, who are they? Where'd they come from? What's their business experience? Have they filed for bankruptcy? Has anyone in the company filed for bankruptcy? Is there any litigation against the company or the principals? All that has to be in the disclosure document. The costs, and it's, it can be ranges, but it's not just, hey, it's going to cost you $100,000 to run this business or start this business. It's like how much equipment, how much for training, how much is the franchise fee? How much, do I need to have set aside for working capital, inventory, equipment, everything else? So they have to explain that very specifically. And then there's the franchise agreement part of it. And this is where they spell out what the franchisor's obligations are. As I said, you're paying, royalties. So, for those royalties, contractually, what does the franchisor have to do? And contractually, what do you have to do as the franchise owner and operator? That document's going to have earnings claims of, the type of income you can make. It's going to have financial statements on the parent company. But one of the most important thing in there, and I can't stress this enough, it's going to give you a list of all the current and past franchise owners. In other words, anyone who's left the franchise in the last 3 years, regardless of why they left. Now, why would you want that? Because these are the people you're going to call or you're going to meet with that are going to tell you the truth. What's the day in the life of an owner look like? What do they do? If they were going to make the decision today, would they make the same decision or would they do something else? How much money are they making? How long did it take them to break even? How do they hire employees? I mean, there's all kinds of things. And you're going to talk to people that are very successful, and that's good. And you're going to talk to people that are unsuccessful. And my guidance to my clients is you need to ask yourself, are you going to run the business? And is your personality and work style more like the successful owners or like the unsuccessful owners? So case in point, if you can only work the business part-time, let's say 20 hours a week, and you find that all the successful owners are working 40 to 50 hours a week, it may not be the best fit. So you want to see how the business operates, and the best way to do this is by talking to the current and past franchise owners. And one of the things when you start your own independent business, a non-franchise business, you can't do that. So if you're going to start a nail salon, you can't go out and start talking to all the nail salons around you because they're your competitors. With the franchise, you can go out and talk to the franchise owners in the same business that are around you. And it allows you to really see past results. And usually the past will indicate the future. So that is another thing that bodes well for franchising. You get to do a lot of due diligence, which is really, really important. But usually the things you've seen happen in that company over the past few years or even decades is going to be an indicator of where this business is going. All right, this is my favorite part. So I'm going to ask you some questions. And what I want you to think about in your head, is this a myth or a fact based on what you know? And these are questions about franchising. So the first question, do you think franchising is just fast food and retail? And that's what a lot of people think about. Well, I know about McDonald's. I've heard of the UPS store. I know about Supercuts. So, a lot of people think, hey, it's fast food or it's retail businesses. And it's a myth. I kind of mentioned earlier, there are 4,000 different franchise organizations out there in almost 100 different industries. I can guarantee you, first of all, there is no list of these 4,000 companies. But if there were, you probably only recognize maybe 100 of these companies. In other words, you oftentimes go to a franchise and don't even know it. It could be a restaurant, or it could be a retail business, or even where you get your dog washed, and you don't even realize they're a franchise. Oftentimes it's an industry or a service you don't use, like let's say senior care. Well, I've never looked for a senior care provider, so I don't know the names of the senior care companies. So in a way, that's kind of the fun part. One of my roles is to help identify businesses that are a good fit for you and what you're trying to accomplish, even if that means these are businesses that you may not have heard of. In fact, 85% of my clients end up buying something that they didn't even realize was out there. Myth or fact, franchises succeed because of the quality of their product. That's another myth. I always tease about McDonald's, but let's be honest. We don't go to McDonald's because we're going to get the best hamburger, the best meal. Why do we go? Well, they've done a really good job with their marketing and their sales and their operations, that we know it pretty much exactly what we're going to get. So if we go to McDonald's in Los Angeles or we go to McDonald's in New York, it's pretty much going to be the same thing, with maybe the exception of price. So we know it's going to be consistent. We know what to expect when we go there. And that's why a lot of people like franchising, because of its consistency over, the scope of all their owners. Myth or fact, there are low-cost franchise opportunities. This is the good news. Yes, there are low-cost franchise opportunities. The question is, everyone has a different interpretation of what low cost is, which is why I put this pie chart up. If you look at those 4,000 different companies, you will see almost half of them are under $250,000. And keep in mind, that's the total investment, including working capital. So that's everything you need to open your doors and start operating the business. And about 1,000 of those companies, of the 4,000, are under 100,000. So even though $100,000 or even $200,000 might seem like a lot of money, in the scope of starting your own business, and knowing that there's financing out there, which we'll talk about, a lot of these businesses are very affordable. Usually when you get over 250,000, that's when you're getting into, restaurants, and you're getting into grocery stores, and you're getting into large retail businesses, or fitness studios, or things like that. I would say on average, my clients are looking for businesses between $100,000 to maybe $250,000. They're going to invest of their own capital, maybe $50,000 to $100,000, and then they're going to look for financing to come up with the remainder. So those are things we talk about. But this just gives you an idea. There are some lower cost franchises available out there. Myth or fact, you don't need industry experience. Fact. The thing is franchisors want people and their transferable skill sets. What are you good at and what are you not good at? What's your personality like? They're going to train you on how to run the business. So if you're buying a tutoring franchise, you don't need to, come from a, school admin background. If you're running let's say a personal training franchise, you don't need to have been a personal trainer. In fact, like I said, most of my clients don't have any specific training or skill sets or education based on the business they're doing. The franchisor is going to train you on how to do that. To give you some examples of that, I have 3 case studies. And the first one is Joe. Joe's a great guy. I worked with him a few years ago. He's in Orange County. He was a pretty high level director in a logistics company. And so he came to me and said, Paige, I'm looking to, exit my corporate job. I want to spend more time with my family. I want more work-life balance. And so I took him through my process. And one of the companies I introduced him to was junk luggers. And the funny thing is Joe came to me and he didn't even want to look at it. He said, Paige, I am not going to tell my family, my friends, my relatives, my work colleagues that I'm a trash guy. What else do you have? And, I kind of laughed. I said, Joe, I totally get it. It's not the sexiest business out there. But I said, based on your profile, based on the model we put together, based on what you're looking for, this might be a good fit. Would you be willing to have one call with the franchisor, one 30-minute call for them just to explain what they do? And if after that call you're not convinced and you don't think it's a good fit, we'll just move on and find something else. And he said, well, Paige, you've been doing this for over 35 years. Yeah, I'll have a call. Now, the funny thing is, not only did Joe buy a junk luggers franchise in Orange County, he bought the entire Orange County market. And I think he's the largest franchise owner in their system. And he's also their number one producer. So Joe went from, I don't even want to look at it, to being one of their top owners and one of their top producers. When we look at Harpreet here, and I know Harpreet well, and he came to me and he had a current job and he still does. He's a scientist. And he said, Paige, I have a good corporate job. I don't want to leave it. I kind of need the income. So I want to start a business that doesn't require me to be there full time. I'm kind of partial to health and wellness. But I need a business where there's going to be a manager running the business and I can work on the business, not in the business. And so I introduced him to Stretch Lab. It's a company based out of Orange County. I happen to own one. And, I said, hey, this is a one-on-one assisted stretching franchise, Harpreet. You're going to hire a general manager. That general manager is going to hire some salespeople and train some flexologists that provide the services. But you need to still be involved in the business, but it's what we call semi-absentee. So he started a Stretch Lab. He is the number one owner in the Orange County area. And now he's gone on to buy a retail pet franchise. So he liked the franchise model so much, he said, hey, I want to do another one. I just want to do it in a different industry, but has been able to keep his full-time job. And lastly, we have Michael and his wife. They're both engineers. Again, both had great jobs. They were looking to exit their jobs, but they needed the income until the business could replace their corporate income. And they like fitness, but they said, Paige, we don't want to own a gym. We don't want an expensive retail location or anything like that. Is there anything in fitness that doesn't require location? So I introduced them to Fitness Machines Technicians, and this is a company that sends out service people to fix Pelotons or go to gyms and fix equipment, or they go to hotels or apartment buildings or things like that. So Michael and his wife don't fix the machines. They hire people to do that. And again, they've kept their full-time jobs. So if you look at Joe with junk luggers, Harpreet with Stretch Lab, and Michael and his wife with Fitness Machines Technicians, they had never heard of these companies prior to meeting me. In some cases, they didn't even know the industry was out there, like one-on-one assisted stretching. And in some cases, they kept their corporate job. So this is just kind of a case study that you don't really need to do something based on your corporate background or your education. Myth or fact, successful franchises emerge in industries with no competition. That's a myth. Successful franchises consolidate a market. So if you look at eyelash extensions, if you look at fitness, if you look at food, all those things, they're competitive industries. But what you're seeing is franchising is starting to dominate those industries because they bring a lot of the benefits a franchise has to a competitive market. So when my clients say, oh, I don't want to look at that business, there are a lot of those out there. I tell them, let's look at the competition. and see how fragmented it is. And also I tell them, I said, to find a business where there's no competition, in my perspective, is risky, because if there's no one doing it, there might be a reason. So competition is actually a good thing. So let's talk a little bit about franchise business models. So whether you're thinking about starting a franchise or whatever, you have to have a model of what the ideal business looks like. Remember, we talked about the real estate agent. When you're working with that real estate agent, you have to have a model of what the ideal house looks like. Otherwise, there's just too many options. So how do we do that? The first thing is we have to decide, is this going to be a full-time business or a part-time business? Now, a lot of people are surprised to find that there are part-time businesses, we call them semi-absentee, where you can keep your existing job. Now, in California, I will say it's a very, very expensive place to live. And a lot of my clients need to keep their job to pay their mortgage, their kids' education, cars, all those things. They say, Paige, I can't just quit my job and go start a business. I wouldn't be able to afford it. So we call this the executive model, where you're working on the business, not in the business. Now, ideally, you can run this business as long as you have a laptop or a cell phone or what have you. You can run it remotely. Now, that could be from your corporate job, as long as the where you work will allow you to do stuff that is not job related. A lot of times people are working from home now, and they can carve out time during the day to work on their business. And usually I tell people you got to have at least 10, probably 20 hours a week to put in the business. It's very, very important to understand these are not passive businesses, meaning you can't go buy any business that I work with and say, hey, I'm just going to let the manager run it and, call me if there's a problem. No, you have to be involved in the business. And I tell people oftentimes you have to see this business as a second job. And by that, I mean, if your manager calls you during the day or texts you, or a customer or a vendor or the franchisor, can you respond to them? It may not be, right then and there, but do you have the type of job, the type of flexibility that will allow you to respond? Because if I have a client that says, well, no, I'm on the clock from 8 in the morning till 5 at night, I could not take phone calls or texts or anything like that, then owning a business, semi-absentee wouldn't work. Or you can be an owner operated. Now, a lot of times my clients like to do this. Maybe they have a pension, maybe they have a spouse who's working, maybe they, have a good portfolio, and they say, hey, I can work in the business full time, meaning more than 20 hours a week. And in this case, you're working on the business as well as in the business. More likely, you're providing leadership skills. You're the direct supervisor. You're creating the culture of that business. You're working with the teams. Again, you don't really necessarily need industry experience, but you might want to be passionate or at least excited about the business. In other words, if you were going to buy a nail salon, and you're like, well, that just sounds really boring to me, it's not going to be something you're going to want to do full time. So if it's something where you're going to work on full time, I usually want to find out what types of things are interested to you, what things are you passionate about, and we see if we can find a business that fits that. Now, how do you find your best fit? Well, a lot of questions that I ask, and there's also a profile we're going to talk about. But are you looking for more work-life balance? It's very rare that I have people say no, but a lot of times people will say, yeah, I don't mind working hard. I don't mind, my corporate job or what have you, but I want more time to travel. I want more time to pursue hobbies. I want more time with my kids. I want more time with my grandkids. So we try and figure out how important that work-life balance is and how to improve that. Are you looking for a growth opportunity? Are you looking for maybe a business like a UPS store that, there's not a lot of growth left in it, but it's pretty stable? Or are you looking for something that has a lot of upside? As we talked about, are you looking for a corporate exit strategy? So sometimes people say, hey, I need my job right now, but boy, I would sure love to get out of my job in the next 2 or 3 years. Paige, is there a business that I can own and operate right now part-time that, maybe I can get to replace my income in the next 2 or 3 years? Is it a scalable business? How much money do you need to make and by when? That's really, really important. Other things to look at, what kind of environment do you want? Do you want employees? If so, what type? Are you looking for hourly people or skilled people? What kind of customers do you want to work with? Do you want a retail location? Do you want a non-retail location? These are all very, very important factors that oftentimes people haven't thought about. And one of the things we do is we came up, FranNet, many years ago with something called the Entrepreneur Profile. And some of you might be familiar with DISC or Myers-Briggs. Those are great assessment tools that oftentimes corporations use to find employees. Well, we came up with the same type of profile. The difference is it helps us and me match you up with businesses based not just on your skill sets and traits, but also your personality, your likes, your dislikes, your managerial style, leadership style, and things like that. So this profile is very, very, very important, and it's scientifically based. And so it's something that my clients take. It takes about 20 or 30 minutes, and there's no cost for it, but they take it in order to get about a 16-page profile sent back that gives them a really good understanding of the types of businesses that are going to fit for them, and more importantly, what types of businesses are not going to fit for them. So this is actually the first step in me helping people, is to have people take this profile. So again, there's no cost, and the results are very, very interesting. And at the end, there'll be a little QR code that'll pull up and you can scan with your phone. And if you want to take the profile, it'll just take you to a secured link. Financial, you have to figure out your household expenses. You have to have a really good understanding, especially if you're going to leave your corporate job, what your monthly expenses are. How much money do you personally have available to invest in the business? And do you need financing on top of that? How much working capital is going to be required to get this business to the point where it starts making a profit? And then I will sit down with people and help them with funding options. Now, sometimes that's a small business administration loan. Sometimes that's a home equity line of credit. Sometimes that's borrowing money against your securities, borrowing money from family. There's all different types of ways to do it. And one of the things I help people do is learn about the different financing options out there, and getting them in touch with those financing experts to see what they might qualify for. So if you're not really sure, like how much money you might be able to borrow, I'd be happy to help you with and introduce you to some really good financing experts. And then you got to understand the earning, potential of a business. There's no correlation with how much money you invest in a business and what you're going to get back. It's very important we understand what your income needs are. And it's also important to understand what the net earnings of the franchise are, not just the gross revenues. And that's something I help people with. And then if we're going to hire a manager, we have to account for that manager's salary. If we're going to get a loan or have some kind of debt service, we have to account for that debt service. So there's a lot of things that come into determining how much that business will make based on a lot of different factors. And then there's research. This is one of the most important things. When I take people through a process of research after we've identified the businesses that fit their business model, I tell them it's going to take 2 or 3 months. This is not something that happens quickly. I mean, first we have to find franchises that fit your model, and then we have to find franchises that you're interested in. And then the first step is talking to the franchisor, and this is usually multiple phone calls or Zoom meetings with the franchisor to learn more about their business. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we need to talk to the owners, not just 1 or 2, but we may talk to 5, 10, or 15 owners. At some point, we need to go visit the franchise, and we need to meet the team and meet the people that we're going to be engaged with for possibly the next 5, 10, 15 years. And then finally, we need to get professional advice. We need legal counsel. We need financing help. Those are all things I help people with. And again, there's no cost for this. But it does take time. What I do tell people, and this is important to understand, is you can't research businesses on the internet. Yes, if you type in UPS store, yes, if you type in Five Guys Burgers or whatever, yes, they have a website. They may tell you how many units they have, and they may tell you what the cost is, and they may give you a general overview, maybe even some testimonials from some of their franchise owners. But on purpose, they give you very, very little information. And the reason is this is an organic process, as is outlined here. The franchisor wants you to be very informed before buying their franchise, and they like that you go through this 2 or 3 month process. And it's frustrating for people. I understand in today's day and age where everything's a mouse click away. People get frustrated. They're like, no, I just want to go on the internet. I want to find a list of the top franchises. I want to go on there and Google something and see videos and all this other information. It really doesn't exist. And that's where I can help. The first thing is we have to find the right franchise. And then I will help you learn how to research it so you can get the answers you need. As far as reading, 3 great books: E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, Built to Sell, and Street Smart Franchising. These are 3 great books. Highly, highly recommend. And also take advantage of the free resources. SCORE is one of the greatest free resources out there for you. And FranNet, yes, I am a free resource. So whether it's the SBA, SCORE, FranNet, what have you, take advantage of these free resources out there. So how do we do that? How do you get more information? And we're going to open it up here for questions and answers. The QR code's a great thing. A lot of people are tech savvy. You just take your phone. This will open up, and it's basically a menu. Page, I want the link to the profile. Page, I want some videos that you can send me on franchising. Page, I'd like to set up a 15-minute call with you just so I understand more about what you do. So you can just click on the QR code and just check the things you want, and then I will respond back to you and send you the information. For those of you that want to call or text me, my phone number's up there. That's my cell phone. You can email me. You're welcome to go to my website or my LinkedIn page if you want to look a little bit more into my background or what I do or see testimonials or things like that. There's a lot of great information out there. So I see that we have, about 7 or 8 minutes left. And I'm going to leave the QR code up. But I am going to let Danielle tell me if there are any questions out there or anything that I can help people with.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks so much, Paige. Great presentation. I don't think that aspiring entrepreneurs get to hear in depth about franchises that much. And so this was a great presentation for people to be able to learn some more. I personally learned a lot. Very interesting. Few questions. You've probably touched on everything, but just to kind of go over some other points. One question, you talked about a lot of the good things people can do when they're looking at franchises. What are some of the mistakes people make when looking for a franchise?
I love this question. This is my favorite question whoever asked. First of all, only looking at things you're passionate about or that you're reading about on the internet or a friend or family member told you about. So a great case in point, my brother-in-law came to me and he said, Paige, I want to buy a Crumbles Cookies, popular franchise. But I asked him, I said, Alex, why do you want to buy Crumbles Cookies? He goes, I love their cookies. And I'm like, okay, what else? And he goes, well, that's it. And so I said, well, there's nothing wrong with liking the product or the service, but do you really know anything about the business or how much it costs or, what the role of the owner is or anything else? He said, no. So oftentimes people will buy things based on what they hear about or what they see as popular or a trend, like boba or something like that. And then I'd say the next biggest mistake is not doing the research. this really is a 2 or 3 month process. So sometimes people will buy something they're really excited about, and they'll just put the blinders on and they won't research the business and maybe find out they made a mistake later on.
Great. Thanks for that. And then another question. Let me take this off here. Are there special incentives or loan programs for women, minorities, veterans?
Yes.
Okay.
So it kind of falls into two categories. So there is a program in franchising called VetFran for veterans, and basically there are many franchises out there that offer discounts to veterans. So usually when I'm meeting with someone, I ask if they're a veteran. If they say yes, then we look at those VetFran programs. But financing really covers a much broader spectrum. There's special programs out there for women-owned businesses, for minority-owned businesses, and yes, again, for veteran-owned businesses. So we usually try and look at the whole package, especially if financing comes into play, to see what you may be eligible for, and then we take advantage of those.
That's a whole presentation in itself, I'm sure. So
yes,
that is good to hear that that is available. I do have one more question from the audience, and that is, I know startup varies based on what you've seen. What has been the highest and lowest startup? I'm thinking that might be the cost of starting it.
Well, when I look at startup, I look at the whole picture, everything it takes to start that business, including enough working capital in the bank to get that business to the point where it's breaking even. And the franchisors have to put that in their disclosure document. But again, it can be arranged. But to be very specific, I'd say the least expensive franchises that I've seen are about $50,000. Now, the most expensive can run into the multi-millions. My wife and I are going to a franchise called Dogtopia today. It's a dog boarding and grooming franchise. I think, they're about $2 million. A McDonald's is $2 or $3 million. I will say, by and large, my clients look at businesses from about $100,000 to $250,000. But that doesn't mean they have that in the bank. That just means we can get them eligible for financing for that.
Okay. And is the financing for franchises that's available, this is just a question that popped in my head, is that more or less similar to the type of financing people can get for their own personal startup, or is it a bit different?
Well, a lot of it's Small Business Administration, which is obviously part and parcel of the score, but that's not the only thing. So a lot of times people think, hey, I can only get an SBA loan, that's all there is. No, there's all kinds of financing programs out there. And one of the things I recommend is, if you're like, hey, Paige, I want more info on these financing companies, just contact me and I can introduce you to some of the programs and some of the people that run those programs.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I'll just say that here at the library, you mentioned many of these groups, SCORE LA, of course, who is our co-organizer for these live streams. And we work also with the the Business Source Centers here in Los Angeles. They also provide great assistance for entrepreneurs. There's SBDC. There are a lot of groups out there that can help in any aspect of starting your business, but including helping folks find financing. So, and I think those books also, for those that are watching this, I think those books that you put up though are available here at the library. So
they've been out for decades. I have to believe it.
Yeah. Oh, one more question. We're just about out of time, but this is a good one, and maybe you can just quickly answer it, Paige.
Okay.
Which type of franchise has the highest success rate? I know you mentioned there's 90 industries or whatever represented, so I don't know if you have a quick answer, but.
Quick answer, it depends. And I know that's not what you want to hear, but the match is so important, because I know people that own UPS stores like me that were very successful, and I know people that failed. FranNet is a franchise. For me, it's worked very well. I know people where it hasn't worked, and you'll find that across every franchise. And like I said, what's important is, are you more like the people that are doing well, or are you more like the people that aren't? So there is no highest success rate. But one of the things we do look at is we're going to talk to enough owners to determine if you can be successful at that business and what your what you think success is for you. Sometimes it's people that say, I want more time. Other people want to make, $500,000 a year. So it's different to everyone.
Great question and great answer. So, well, it's just about 1 o'clock. This was fantastic. I don't see any more questions from our viewers. Thank you for those who did send in your questions. They were great. Paige, thank you so much. This was wonderful. We really enjoyed having you. And thank you again for those that are viewing. Thanks for joining us, and have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Danielle.